Today I'm going to be taking a look at the MinisForum X400. This model has the Ryzen 5 4650G. It is a 35 watt part, which is, I believe, clocked down to 25 watts by MinisForum. It came from the factory with 16 gigs of RAM and a 512 gig NVMe SSD. I did replace the 16 gigs of RAM with 32 gigs of Crucial Ballistics, and I did add a 1 terabyte SATA SSD for storage. We'll be taking a look to see how this performs in gaming, particularly under Linux. Alright, so I've got the specs up on screen so you can see the basics of what we're working here. Now, as I did mention, this is a 35 watt part. It's the Ryzen 4650G. However, I believe it's clocked down to about 25 watts. There's really no way for me to tell this because the BIOS is extremely limited, other than a few options for setting a hard drive password. There are no options. MinisForum did recently release a BIOS update which will allow you to turn Secure Boot on or off for Windows 11 compatibility, but that's about it. You cannot control the fan curves, you cannot control the fan speeds. However, everything seems to be highly optimized. I haven't really had a whole lot of issues with noise or speed. One thing that is lacking is the ability to activate XMP memory profiles, so you cannot overclock memory. Okay, so I'm going to apologize for this video picture here for a second. When we get to the gameplay footage, the picture will be restored, but my capture card only captures 1080p and 30 frames per second, and I did not want to have that go out. I wanted you to see the actual frame rates as they are during gameplay. So I'm using OBS to record this. Now I'm running Kubuntu 20.04.2. I am using the latest, the freshest Mesa stable drivers from Kaisak Mesa. I highly recommend you do this. These are not bleeding edge, these are stable, but they do include a lot of updates that aren't available in base Kubuntu, such as the ACO compiler for your graphics. I'm going to flip over here just to look at the temperatures, and as you can see while recording, they are going up a little bit, but they are pretty stable. Even now, you can't hear the fan. This is a pretty quiet system. Now, under heavy gaming, yes, you will hear the fan. And I just want to show you some benchmarks before we cut to the gameplay. So, I also have a desktop next to me, which is a Ryzen 5 3600. So it's pretty comparable to the 4650X. It does have more cache, and crucially, that desktop is able to overclock memory. So we can enable XMP profiles in there, and it's also got a 5700 XT. So if we look at the benchmarks there, we have a single core score of 1293 and a multi-core score of 7594. Now when we switch to the MinisForum X400, we have a single core score of 1211, so it's a little off, not that bad, and a multi-score score of 6624. Now I have no doubt that these scores would be much better if we can enable XMP, but at this time we can't do that. So first up, we have some Warframe. And as you can see, we are hitting more or less 75 frames per second. And once again, I should mention that OBS, because I'm recording with OBS, will rob anywhere between 5 and 10 frames per second of performance. So without OBS recording, we would easily be able to hit that 75 frames per second.
But are you confident you can withstand it? You're near a fissure. Here is a terminal. Get me in and get ready to defend. Use that reactant to open a relic. I'm in, Tenno. This will take a moment. You are going to need more reactant if you want to open that relic.
Next up, we have some War Thunder. And once again, we are hitting a 75 frames per second without any issues. This is an impressive little APU. Alright, next up we have some World of Warships, and once again, this is very, very playable. I don't think this APU would have any issues at all with any of these esports titles, and I should point out that OBS is dragging the performance down slightly. The frames per second would be anywhere between 5 and 10 frames per second higher if we weren't running OBS. But again, you can see we're pretty much up at 75 frames per second without any issues. And finally, I just want to show you guys the temperatures after gaming. As you can see, the temperatures have gone up, but so have the fans. It's noticeable, but not annoying. If you game with headphones, you're not going to hear that at all. So in conclusion, I want to wrap this up. I think this is a great little mini PC. There's a lot of potential here, even without the BIOS unlocks. If MinisForum ever does unlock those options in BIOS, I think this will be even better.